nā reira ko ngā whakaro me ngā ko ngā whakaro ki te tāki aia I tēnei wā. Nā reira mātā ko tātou hui e tīmaka I runga I te kuku karaki e haere nei, e honore he kōria ki te atua mo tala mau ngā rongo ki runga ki te whenua, e whakaro kai ngā rāwa katoa anō hoki. Kia whakapaingia koe I koa e tō mātou mātua, nā hoki te mana te kororia, te wikitoria, te honore, nō anō hoki te rangatiratanga e kore nei e mutu. Ka whakamuimiti nei hoki mātou kia koe, mō ko wai honei hei upuko mo ngā iwi katoa I te ao. Whakapaingia te ingoto tātou mātua I tēnei rā, ke ake gloria ki toa ingoa tapu āmini. Nā rere I hoa tohungia mātou, e te karaiti tohungia mātou, e I hoa tohungia mātou, e tō mātou mātua I te rangi, kia tapu toa ingoa, kia tai mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mietia tāu e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua kia riki anō ki tō te rangi. Pō mai kia mātou ai nei he taro mo mātou mo tēnei rā, muru o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muri nei o te hinga e harana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea kia whakawaia, e Mauri whakaorangia mātou I te kino, nō hoki te rangatiratanga, te kaha me te kororia, ake, anu. Ka tai ka rua ka miki kia tātou e whae nei, ka miki I runga I tēnei rā o te atua, te rātapu, nau mai, haere mai, ki tēnei hui a tātou, me ki te whiriwhiri I ngā kōrero ka whakaatu I tēnei wā, me te whakawhitiwhiti whakaro I roto I ngā puka e takotone. Ka re tōroa I ngā kōrero, e ngari me tū ki te mihi ki te meki, te haukainga, nei hoki te marihiri I tēnei wā, nā reira kia koutou e pupuri nei te mana whenua o tēnei wāhi, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Tēnā mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Tēnā mai ngā iwi, tātou e, whai a te maramatama, e te aroa e ngā iwi, ki apatapatai, ki apotai rā, tātou e, tātou e, kia wehi.
Kaira.
Kia ora tātou. My name is Leon Symes, the chairperson of the Tātou Te Wairoa Trust. I'd just like to welcome everyone here today to our second round of engagement hui that we're holding throughout the motu to seek your feedback on the proposed models around asset arrangements and governance representation. So welcome here today, welcome for showing up on Sunday to see our presentation, to engage with the trustees and further dialogue with you on this particular matter. To begin with, I'd just like to get our individual trustees here present as well, to get up and introduce themselves. For a key part of our work is our engagement with your members, so you need to know who particularly is representing you on Tātou Te Wairoa Trust. At the end of today's presentation, we'll be breaking up for a cup of tea, and we want you to engage with your trustees one-on-one if you have any particular questions regarding particular aspects of what's discussed today. So I'll just pass it on to them to introduce themselves, and then we'll further proceed with the presentation.
Kia ora tātou, ko Richard Nieni ahau, and I'm the one of two representatives for the Wairoa Waikari Moana Māori Trust Board cluster. Tēnā tātou.
A tau mai tō tātou nei karakia, no reira tēnā koe irihari. My name's Piri Munro. I'm one of the trustees from Whakaki Nui Arua. The other trustee back at home is Heta Kaukau.
Kia ora no tātou. I'm Hene Con. I'm from Wairoa Tapukarau Cluster 1, but I'm also on the Kāhui Kaumātua Committee.
Kia whai kororia hariruia kia iho ngā mano mātua tamo aero tapu ngāne rupo ngā ngai. Ko te awhina kamansi te taku ingoa, ko ai te pōtake Richard John, Dick Burrell and Turi Burrell, Nitapuna. Thank you all for coming out today. I'm one of 2 trustees for Hene Manuhiri. The other one, Hui Huata, she stayed back home to participate in the pāhaka. It was held at Takitamu yesterday. Yeah, awesome to see you guys, and my cousins, Tori and Lillian.
Oh, kia ora tātou. My name is Johnina Symes. I'm one of the trustees for Ngāti Rākai Pāka. And our other trustee is Pauline Symes. Yeah, it's all run by Symes, this process.
Sorry.
But she's at home looking after the hau kāinga. Kia ora tātou.
And I'm one of 2 trustees representing Rongo Waiwahine Ngāi Tara katoa. The other trustee is Moana Rongo. I'd just like to extend our welcome to Hene Con here, because she's part of the Kaumātua Kāhui group that we instituted over the last couple of months. It's in the trustee that we need to constitute that committee to provide us, the trustees, with a bit of guidance through this process. So they've been operating now since about August. They've been meeting, getting themselves organised. They've elected a chairperson, Nigel Howell's their chairperson. They have two representatives from each of the 7 kāhui on there. I've been to a number of their meetings and they're quite, interesting, to say the least. But it's good that we need that guidance from them. Just moving on, today's presentation is a reflection, we hope it's a reflection of the feedback you provided us back in August. So we've taken that feedback and we've compiled it into basically 2 models, which is what we were required to do, but also there is a separate proposal there about a withdrawal process for a particular rōpū or kāhui. So we've also, at the front of all that, started with the values and principles again. We've made sure that we've incorporated your feedback into that. And today we're just going to provide that overview again, all that feedback. The values and principles is kind of where we wanted to start with first, rather than focusing on other aspects. We start with that level and then we can hopefully work out, flow through with the models and the representation arrangements. So without any further talk from me, we'll get into the presentation. Much of it's contained in the booklet. We'll have a question and answer session after that where the members can ask questions of me, questions of other trustees as well, and then we'll break for a cup of tea and then we can have that one on. So we want to engage as much as possible and get your feedback today. So we really need some guidance, and particularly at the back of the books from page 23 onwards, there's some key questions we need to ask. Those are the particular feedback aspects that we need from you from today. So without any further ado, with health and safety, the exits are clearly marked there and there. Wharepaku is just straight out to the left, past the counter here. Okay, thank you.
Kei ngā uri o kura aupō, kei ngā uri o tāki timu, nau mai, hara maira.
Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai. Thank you for joining us today in our 2nd round of Engagement Hui to plan for our prosperous future. We are Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa Trust, the Post-Settlement Governance Entity, or PSGE, for the iwi and hapu o Te Rohe o Te Wairoa. It is our responsibility, on behalf of our iwi and hapu, to manage the redress that will be received as part of our settlement with the Crown. In August this year, we held our first round of Engagement Hui across 9 locations in Aotearoa. Our trustees sought your feedback on our values, aspirations and principles, and on proposed concepts for how our representation and asset ownership structure could look in the future. It was great to see so many whānau participating, and new faces too, with many tuning in to watch the live-streamed videos and sending us their thoughts online. We received invaluable feedback from you during this time, which has shaped our trustees' mahi over the last 2 months. Now we're coming back to you to kōrero some more. Today's hui is an opportunity to hear more about the feedback you have provided so far and to talk through our refined values, aspirations and principles and models for representation and asset ownership. We want to know if we have heard you correctly and if you agree with the proposals we present. What you tell us during this hui is critical to help shape the thinking on our future representative structure and about asset ownership arrangements. The presentation covers the key points in your information booklet. Following this presentation, we will have 30 minutes for you to ask any questions you may have. Ka tahi ka kaputi tātou, so you can meet and talk to your representatives and our support teams who are here today. Also, if you are not yet a registered member of Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa, we can help you register today. We are back on a hikoi across Aotearoa, holding our second round of hui in Wairoa, Ahuriri, Te Whanganui a Tara, Rotorua, Kirikiriroa, Tāmaki Makaurau, Te Papaioia, Waihōpai, me o Tautahi. We are presenting exactly the same information at each hui, which will cover a recap of our August hui and what we asked of you, a look at the feedback we received from whānau, our aspirations, values and principles considering the refined approach, our recommended approach for representation, 2 models as options for our asset management. Your feedback is important. We want to know we have heard you correctly and if we're on the right track. What you tell us today will directly impact on the models our trustees recommend to you for voting on next year. Remember, it's you, our people, who ultimately decide on the future of Tātou Tātou. We will now focus on the areas where we want your feedback, thoughts and questions. Firstly, your aspirations, values and principles. In 2012, a series of workshops were held to identify our aspirations as we work towards the settlement. At our August Engagement Hui, we asked you to tell us whether these aspirations were still relevant to you today. These are important as they will help to guide Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa as we move forward. When providing feedback, we ask you to consider: do the aspirations, values and principles still fit for our whānau, hapu and iwi? How would you like us to operate? Do these best reflect your aspirations, values and principles? What might be missing? We will now look at the aspirations, values and principles which have been updated and refined to reflect what you have told us. Our updated and refined vision is Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa, he iwi motuhake, he tangata oranga ake. Our updated and refined aspirations centre around the well-being of our iwi, hapu and whānau. They are social well-being, restoration of health and social conditions for our iwi and hapu, cultural well-being, restoration and protection of the cultural identity of our iwi and hapu, environmental well-being, revitalisation of the local environment and restoration of our role as kaitiaki of our natural resources, economic well-being, rebuilding an economic base for our iwi and hapu and reassertion of our tino rangatiratanga. Our refined values and principles focus on the areas that you told us are most meaningful to you. They are wairuatanga, fostering our unique features of mana whenua and tangata whenua. Rangatiratanga, your right to be the architect of your own future and development. Manaakitanga, respecting, nurturing and caring for others. Kaitiakitanga, guardians of ngā taonga tuku iho, te taiao. Whanaungatanga, our kinship is determined through blood and whāngai, whakapapa. These refined aspirations, values and principles aim to reflect the feedback you have given us. So, have we heard you correctly? Do these aspirations, values and principles reflect the way you believe tātou tātou should be guided in our mahi? E anga whakamua ana te waka, forging a new path. We will now look at the refined models for our future representation and 2 models as options for our asset management structure. What we asked of you. At our previous engagement hui, we presented you with 3 asset and representation concepts. There were devolution, whakatoha-toha, collaboration, mahi-tahi, amalgamation, kotahitanga. Each of these concepts could be applied separately to assets and representation arrangements, or parts taken from each to create a new model. They reflect possibilities at each end of the scale and a middle option. In August, you told us what you thought of these concepts and why, what aspects you like and what parts you don't like. We have listened to your views and brought them together to develop a recommended representation approach and 2 new models for the future structure of tātou tātou for you to consider. A representation approach could be 7 rōpū, like the existing kāhui groups, but based on rohe and tipuna. The new models for you to consider are Model 1, whakatōpū, consolidated ownership, shared management of assets for the benefit for all. Model 2, kanorau, diversified ownership. Rōpū owns some assets and tātou tātou owns some assets. We will now talk more about each of these options. From your feedback, many whānau want to continue on the path that we have forged through the settlement process so far, being grouped by kāhui or clusters of hapū for representation, then coming together under one umbrella group. After considering your feedback, the initial trustees recommend the following representation approach for tātou tātou o te Wairoa Trust. 7 rōpū, like the existing kāhui groups, but based on rohe and tipuna. This means that each rōpū will include hapū that whakapapa to that tipuna and marae that are based within that rohe. Each rōpū would elect its own 2 representatives, including at least 1 ahi kā, as trustees for tātou tātou. You would choose 1 rōpū for the purposes of voting to elect your trustees. You can also list other rōpū as part of your registration with tātou tātou if you have a whakapapa connection to 1 or more hapū within those other rōpū. We also need to decide if there should be the option for a rōpū to leave tātou tātou o te Wairoa if it decided that it wanted to be independent. If our people want this to be able to happen, the tātou tātou trust deed would need to be amended. This would be done as part of the vote early next year on the structure of tātou tātou o te Wairoa Trust. We have outlined a process in your information booklet on how this would work. The key principles are that high voting thresholds ensure fairness and a robust process. All adult registered members of tātou tātou would need to vote to approve the framework, as this ensures transparency for all. A rōpū could not trigger an exit at any time. They would have to do it within a certain period so tātou tātou has certainty going forward. If a rōpū becomes independent, they would no longer be a part of tātou tātou, not have any trustee representatives on tātou tātou, and remain connected to tātou tātou through a formal agreement for cultural redress and rights to purchase RFR land. This is your choice, whānau. If you think it is important for rōpū to have this option, we can include it in the special resolutions that you will vote on early next year. Now we will look a bit closer at the models for our asset ownership arrangements. All this information is contained in the information booklet from page 18 onwards. The first model is whakatōpu, consolidated ownership. In this scenario, tātou owns and manages all assets for the benefit of all the iwi and hapu o te rohe o te Wairoa. Everyone shares in the whole of the assets, so no asset is given to a specific rōpū, and all ups and downs in performance of assets are shared. The second model is kano rau, diversified ownership. Here, each rōpū would own some of their own assets and be responsible for those. Tātou o te Wairoa Trust also owns some assets. Rōpū and tātou can engage in a management policy to share administration of commercial assets. Let's now look at the key features of the two models. Remember, these models are based on your feedback and are not final. Your feedback today will help shape these further. We'll start with whakatōpu, consolidated ownership. Key features of this model are Tātou owns all the deferred selection properties, the Patunamu and Wharerata forest interests, and any right of refusal land purchased in the future. Tātou manages these assets for the benefit of all. All ups and downs in performance of assets are shared, as are all risks, costs and administration. Everyone shares in the whole of the assets. Tātou distributes profits to rōpū annually, reinvests income for future generations, and funds operations. Grouping assets will create economies of scale, guided by collective decision-making. In comparison, kano rau, diversified ownership, means that ownership of assets is shared. On settlement, rōpū could be allocated a percentage of all cash and assets, with the remaining cash and assets pooled in tātou. Rōpū and tātou can engage in a management policy to share administration of commercial assets. Under this model, profits and losses are incurred by the rōpū from the assets that they own. For commercial properties, a rōpū will need to instruct tātou to exercise a right to purchase a deferred selection property or future RFR site. Dispute resolution processes will be put in place if rōpū cannot agree on ownership of certain assets. Cultural redress relationships remain with tātou. So, those are the two refined models. To see these in more detail, go to pages 18 to 21 of your information booklet. It's important to understand that what you have seen today is not final. We are simply seeking your feedback to determine if we have heard you correctly in August, and if we've got it right. Today we want your feedback on our aspirations, values and principles, our representation approach, our two asset management models. Let's now recap. We are holding the second series of Engagement Hui to check we've heard you correctly and seek your feedback on the refined models. In February next year, we plan on holding a ratification process on the special resolutions required by our trust deed, where we will ask you to vote on our potential asset and representation arrangements. What we recommend to you then will be heavily influenced by what you tell us today. We anticipate that in early to mid-2018, our settlement legislation is likely to pass its final reading and become law. That will bring an end to over 30 years of mahi on this important kaupapa. However, it is just the beginning of our new era. By the end of August 2018, we will need to complete the amendments to the trust deed by special resolution, and in October there will be new trustee elections. It's an incredibly busy but exciting time for our whānau, and we are grateful you are here on this journey with us. You can provide feedback on the feedback form at the back of your information booklet or through our online feedback form on the Tātou website or on our Facebook page. Remember, it is you, our people, who decide on the final asset and representation arrangements. In 2018, all adult registered members will have the opportunity to vote on the special resolutions. So please check with whānau to ensure they're registered. If not, tell them to head to our website now. We'll now have questions and answers. Before we do, we have the following ground rules. Please respect others and remain quiet so that their questions can be heard clearly. Please identify yourself when you speak so we can record your name. Please keep questions related to the aspirations, values and principles, the recommended representation approach, or the 2 asset ownership models outlined today. For other matters, please talk to one of your representatives. Nō reira, from all of us here at Tātou o Te Wairoa Trust, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Mauri ora.
As I say, the presentation, the content of it is a reflection of where the trustees are currently at in terms of the discussion with amongst themselves, as well as providing your feedback into the process. It is a discussion that we need to have. It is a discussion that is quite diverse and it's quite intense at the trustee level, considering the implications we have of making this decision now. Yeah, with those implications, there's a lot of responsibility to make sure the decisions we make now has a long-term impact into the future. That's why we are taking this quite seriously. The trustees have instituted quite a heavy engagement policy to make sure that our members are informed of what's going on, are fully informed right through the process, as well as informed when it comes to the final time to make a decision. And as you see there, the trustees may not come down to one particular model. It is quite difficult to kind of bring those different aspects together. With the first round of engagement, we started quite high level, having the devolution, amalgamation. Those were just concepts. Here are the models. So that's the next step down. We're trying to narrow this down to get to a single model or single recommendation. We may not get there to that single recommendation. We may need you to vote on these in the future. But we will try our best, the trustees, to bring all your feedback together to get it down to one particular recommendation. We will come back again with those recommendations to explain it to all our members when it's time to vote, to make sure they understand what is it that they are voting on. We do understand there's some detail to come within the models. We're trying to work through those details. It is quite complex, a discussion to have, but we just want to reassure you that we're having those discussions that need to be had now, rather than wait till later when it may get a bit difficult to have those discussions. So moving back to the presentation, you would have seen we started off with the values, aspirations and principles. I just want to focus on that section first. Is there anything pertains in that particular section that you think we should change? We've had some feedback already regarding the aspirations and how water should be a separate well-being out there. Are there others? You can see from the well-being structure that a lot of the environmental, social well-being, cultural well-being relies on economic well-being to support some of those initiatives. But at the same time, we need to make sure that whatever Crown funding is out there to support those other initiatives, we make sure the Crown will keep them in account to make sure that they provide that funding as well. So we'll start with questions and answers through the sections as we work through the booklet pertaining to aspirations, values and principles. You see our visions changed slightly. We had this healthy, wealthy tangata whenua, which was a bit floppy, hairy-fairy. we're trying to narrow it down a bit and get it to be a bit more meaningful. Has anyone got any questions with values, aspirations, principles? It tends to be the non-contentious issue.
Just got to ask you to speak into this.
First, I've got a question about why are you doing the values and principles? Because at Hinemanahiri we do that ourselves. So as autonomous hapu, how does that fit with us? Because we have our own aspirations, our own values, our own principles.
Yeah, so this will guide us through this discussion we're having now. It decides us to that phase where those rōpū become more independent and then they can develop their own values, aspirations on the ground level. Because we're collectively settled as one comprehensive settlement together, we need to work by a value set to begin with, to start to have a conversation about the models, the independence process.
So I don't understand you. What do you mean? Because who are those for?
They're for the collective tātou.
But not for the individual hapu. Because we all do our own things.
Own values and principles, yeah.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
And aspirations. Yeah, because we understand that each rōpū has their own.
No one else any values and the well-being, aspirations? So under these 5 principles here, there sit other values and principles as well. We got feedback to say it was a good idea to group these into particular areas, so then we can look at them and we can measure ourselves against them to make sure that we're achieving.
This is well, I'm the youngest in the group.
Kia ora. Kia ora tātou, ko Debbie Walker tuku ingoa, ko Rākai Pāka te hapu, ko Maumau Kai te maunga, te Nuhaka te awa, ko Wiremu Waka rawa, ko Tira Haere Horomono, o ku Mātua Tipuna, ko Pei, ko Gasta, ko Pāpā. Reira, tēnā tātou katoa. If we could just go back to the previous one, I just discovering this process, I've been registered and I've been wanting to engage with this in a more detailed way for a while now, and just finally getting here. Kia ora, cousin Leo, for getting me along. And I have to say that I've just seen this, and that I really like the way things are connected up, and I think that just having looked at it quickly, it seems to me that the most important things are there. It just occurred to me in the cultural well-being that it's probably understood, it's probably implicitly there, but I think it would be nice if there was a word that would take things one step further from restoring, protecting, and maybe a word that indicates that we're moving forward, something like development, something like promoting, development, just something like that.
Okay. No, good. Revitalisation.
Restoration, protection, revitalisation, and I think it's probably there, but I think it would be nice if we spelled out that we are rebuilding our base and that we are moving forward.
Yeah. Good feedback. Leo?
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Leo Kozi o taku ingoa, ko Nuhaka te awa, ko Maumau Kai te maunga, Ngāti Kahanunu te iwi, Rākai Pāka te iwi. And not that I prefer one model over the other. And so in terms of cultural well-being, I agree with that. We have to be a living culture. We're not just a restored and protected culture that sits in a museum or a marae that's just there for tangi. We actually have to be living and flourishing with kapa haka festivals. And I guess I would tautoko my cousins kōrero, but I'd also say somewhere in there too in terms of reo. And that it's pretty much overarching, really, and also our own nita, our own history of our reo, and as part of Ngāti Kahanunu and our own iwi hapu whānau connectivity.
Cool. Excellent. Good feedback there, Leo. Anyone else got any questions and remarks about our well-being?
Ko Margaret Purkis ahau, ko Judy o Manapauri Langley Shaw and Effie Langley Shaw. My question here is, and I'm familiar with a lot of the iwi structures now where it doesn't filter down to the individual. So I'm waiting to see the word every child and every person benefits, because I don't want to see another corporate structure. And that isn't written into a lot of the trust deeds. They talk about restoring the economic base and restoring the cultural identity, but they don't speak about the individual being impacted on in a positive way. So I was wondering where that sits in terms of, you talk about iwi, hapu and whānau well-being, but the individual. So a young lad here on the street that I met recently, who's kahununu, says, what's the point of going home, because it's just a corporate body, and a young boy from Tainui comes up to Auckland to get work because nobody helps him back home in Tainui. So just maybe something that speaks to every individual having right of access to the fruits of economic development. Mira?
Yeah, no, good. In terms of seeing that with other PSGs, they have purely focused on this well-being first, taking the asset base, trying to build it up, then to support those other well-beings, because it costs money to run the other well-being. So if you start with an economic base and build it up, and then you're able to support those other well-beings, and that's where it's taken longer for the members on the ground to see it, because there's that focus on the economic, but at the same time we should be doing as much as we can to do those other well-beings at the same time. We won't work out the balance. And a lot of the corporate structure, that's been the model that we're seeing go forward. The larger ones have focusing on the balance sheet. But now they start to measure, well, how many jobs are we creating? How many, what does our levels look like? What is our social, what is our health, housing? So we're unique in the situation by our members having the ability to set that structure off to begin with. So we create that structure first, rather than it being told what it is from the outset. So for the members is to say, this is what we need to incorporate in our trustee. Making sure you're balancing those well-beings, not just focusing on the one. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, my name's Tūrama Rākai Pāka. Kia ora. I have come into the scene pretty late, and so aroha mai, I don't really understand where everything started from, and I haven't had time to research. So I apologise if some of the comments I make today are somewhat naive and uninformed, but I only hope that there's some others out there like me. So we talk about our aspirations, and in the context of the now and the going forward, I completely tautoko those and look forward to how we develop that. But I am concerned because actually I consider myself a fairly knowledgeable person in terms of some things, but completely naive unknowledgeable in terms of other things. And one of those things is my personal past, because actually I don't know how I got here. And I would hazard a guess there would be a lot of our people who don't know how we actually got here. How was our land alienated? I know a lot about Ngaitahu, Tainui, because I learned it at university, but I don't know about myself, and that concerns me because I know I have access to that information, but I'm thinking to myself, hey, here's a forum, our US trustees and what we're trying to achieve. Here is an ideal forum where all of the rōpū in this group perhaps could have a base or somewhere from which we could learn. So one of the first things I'd like to just comment or throw into the mix is there was the question, what might we be missing? And I'm thinking, well, I'm missing knowledge about previous models. How did our people govern themselves? How were our asset bases? How were those shared among our hapu, among the tribe? Because from that we can learn going forward. Because it just seems to me that we have these models, we say that they're coming from our people, but actually I don't see a lot of and this is not
a complaint of any type. I'm just saying I would like for there to be more transparency in terms of when I ask the question, who are the professionals guiding these decisions, who are putting together all of these models. Despite what we say in terms of our people are coming back and putting it together, there needs to be some professionalism in the background, and I'd like to know who that is.
Okay,
Simple as that. So just those two things, where have we come from? In the hope that it will guide how we choose to guide ourselves in future. And number two, maybe some transparency, again, to give an independent, to give us an independence, an ability to say, oh, okay, we know who's you know, the professionals behind this and just going forward. Kia ora.
Yeah. So there are two parts to your question there. The first part is, how did we get to here? Well, we got to here because of Crown policy. You know, Crown told us to come together as one large national grouping to formulate Te Tira Whakiimi, or the Waira Working Group at that time, for them to negotiate one comprehensive settlement. So we're individually grouped ourselves in different regions around Te Wairau, but we're forced to come together at a central point. So at this point in time, we've come together as one for the purpose of a Crown process, but now going forward is, what do we want to do with ourselves in terms of our vision going forward, without Crown policy imposing on top of us. So it's more a reflection of what do we want to look forward for the future, what structure do we need to set up. But at the same time, we know how we got here, but we need to then overstep what the Crown influence has been through that treaty settlement process and go back to our roots, our whakapapa roots, our connections back to the whenua. And that's why the trustees in the recommendation or representation model come up with rohe and tupuna. So you start there and then you build out from that approach. In terms of the second part, in terms of professional advice, what are the trustees themselves, how they are getting the advice they need to bring this all together. Well, we've engaged Chapman Tripp, and we've got one of the lawyers here today, Erin at the back, so that they are a part of the process as well to make sure that, you know, we're doing, coming up with the right information, that it's, you know, and structured in such a way that it makes it clear to our members, it's compliant with law and stuff like that.
So just building on that, so in terms of our koro, our karawa who are able to tell us, you know, those models that we used in the past, how could we implement a knowledge process? How could we, you know, I'm just throwing that at you now. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm just thinking, you know, outside the square, because, sorry, I actually meant our past, not our immediate past, because, you know, we're told how and what we can do. I completely understand that. Hopefully, moving forward, we can break those shackles a bit more and be a bit more lenient, and with the help of Chapman Tripp, we can achieve that. But in terms of the knowledge base in our ropu, I mean, in the group, is there any way that we could, like, put it onto the website and start people, you know, seeing? I mean, even if it's an open forum where anyone and their dog can come on and start talking about how we used to do things, just purely for knowledge, so everyone can enjoy or understand different aspects. Yeah, because a lot of that information you're looking at contains in Maui Land Court records, you know, about which particular hapu were in which particular areas, why they were there, you know, how they got to be there. So that kind of information is where the trustees are looking at forming the basis of the groupings, based on those lohi and tupuna. From that provides that traditional structure, you know, who were the ones in charge in that particular region. You know, was there any ones who covered the whole district? Maybe there weren't. There was just certain areas of the district was broken up into certain areas for certain tipuna, and they were the ones who were kaitiaki over that particular area. So yeah. Great. Questions.
Kia ora, I just want to answer a couple of those questions. These models are Pākehā models, they're not Māori traditional models of economic, cultural, social wellbeing, although they're all tied into that. Our people were really hapu based, and especially Rakai Pākehā out there, you were doing your own thing, and us out at our way, we were doing our own thing, and so that's actually not reflected in any of these models. Just like to add that. Kia ora.
Cool.
Tēnā tātou katoa. My name is June Hine Tapairu oka, no te whakakia hau. I've looked at the models. I have been at education where I've talked about all these kind of models. Yes, they're Pākehā. And we're trying to use that Pākehā theme and idea for us. I don't want my land to go to anybody else but my whānau and my hapu. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Let's bring it back to their values, aspirations, and principles. Is there anything else? We move into the representation.
Kia ora, I'm Mary Thompson from the Cluster 2. I have a question, and it's just a question. Can you put that thing back up, the models? One? Yeah. I'm only asking. It feels like going through everything in the model and comparing it to our values and our principles. I'm just wondering, where is an education? Where would education, to me, I just feel it's missing.
Cool.
It's missing because, and I say it in that way, because when we first came in to register, we had to be 18 and over. Our mokopunas wanted to be a part of everything, but wasn't allowed, just merely for registering. And you see what that education will do to help us with the rōpus is also that it'll show a forecast of the up and coming generations.
Yeah.
This is how it will show. And education can mean many things.
Yep.
But if you have that up there, it'll allow for all the collective rōpu to include when they come to doing strat plans to be implemented, because you have it at this level.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that excellent thing. Cool. Any more on values, aspirations, and principles for you?
Could you just go back to the slide before?
The vision.
Yeah, the vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you just translate for us what you see that as meaning?
So it's uplifting the mana of the entities or the rōpu, the iwi, at the ground level to make the people prosperous.
Okay, because I mean, I guess kind of the only thing I'm not seeing in the values is you know, are we wanting to, as an iwi, to be, you know, business as usual in the Pākehā way of living, or are we wanting to express ourselves independently as tātou iwi hapu whānau o te Wairua, as well as our own hapu as well? And that's, I'm not kind of like sensing that. It kind of feels very
corporate,
business as usual, as opposed to aspirational. And I think we are aspirational. So just to maybe make it more aspirational, like you know, when you talk about education, you know, we're teaching our own kiddies, not the system that's done all the bad things. Kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora.
Mere anō. We have accepted that, mostly because they're based on our protocols, not a process. And when you have that up in front of you, that puts a lot of mana into that. So those are my values and our principles. However, when the time comes, you're going to eventually create a business up, eventually. So that's when your policies and te mea will matter too. But right now, that's significant and reasonable, and it happens. We live it and we breathe it, but we never put mana and money in the same breath. I'm only speaking of our mana. This we accept. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks, man.
Yes, of course. Aroha mai. Doreen and I are actually trying to put the taura here together here in Auckland.
Oh, kia ora.
Kia ora. So we've got forms here. Excuse me. We've got forms here that we're going to give to everybody who lives here, who want to be part of the taura here. Do we all understand what a taura here is? Because a lot of our people who live here think they should sign back in with their whānau back home. No, when you're here, you're in the taura here. In other words, you belong in this rohe. And we do need to start that again and hold meetings. And we could be doing things like this within those meetings. Cool. So those who are interested, come and see me or Doreen. Thank you.
Go. Get back.
Oh, and by the way, does this touch whangarei? Because whangarei comes under our taura here. And I think that's wrong. They need to have one themselves. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Yeah.
They'll see you, but not hear you.
Okay, kia ora. He tangata oranga ake, ko te oranga. He te tikanga o tera.
Tana oranga? Yeah.
Ko te ora tera, ngai ko tēnei te oranga. Nō rei, he orite te kupu oranga ki te oranga. Ko re taku pātai kia koutou. Ah, ana, okay, kia ora, kua marama, ana. Me whakatika. Me whakatika. E hara I te me tika, me whakatika. Kia ora. Okay, kapai. I think it's back to front. Before you can have an autonomous iwi, you need to have well people.
Yeah.
Ko tai mai nā raho I mua te ure. O tira, ka tai e tātou te whakatutiki tera moi ā rā ko te iwi motuhake. Mena ka noho tonu tātou kei raro I te mana o te trust. I te mea, he mokopuna ia no te kawana, no te kuini. Kore taku pātai kia koutou. Can we actually have autonomy when we reside under the mana or the control of a trust, which is a descendant of the crown, therefore the grandchild of the Queen of England?
That's a good question. There's a question about how we look at ourselves in terms of, do we look at ourselves as part of a wider community, or do we look at ourselves as autonomous? Yeah, autonomous within our own structure. And other iwi are looking at themselves autonomously, independent of the crown and independent of the world that they operate within, and wanting to be the ones who support their people autonomously. But you know, this is the debate we have here. Where do we sit within the Pākehā world in terms of, because that's where we live currently, in Te Ao Māori world.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Doreen Tahuri Christie tōku ingoa, no Hine Manuhiri, Tamaterangi. I just wanted to check mana motuhake, which was a very strong theme in the last round. Where does that belong in this? That's the first question.
Where does it belong in this? It'll belong right through the wall. Yeah.
With the models that we are, and just taking your point, Jason, around autonomy for us mana motuhake rangatiratanga, we believe we cannot achieve that under both of those models, because they are both driven by us sitting at a table with one vote amongst 7 or 6. So us as a hapu, ngā tokurima Hine Manuhiri, we will not accept
that our future is determined by 6 other or 5 other hapu and iwi in our rohe. What I want to remind everyone of is that before this process, and you mentioned it, Leon, that we were forced together to negotiate. We were individual hapu and iwi before this process. What we are saying is we're going back to our individual hapu and iwi after this process. Now it is concluded, we had many claims, one settlement. The one settlement comes from the government need to have one settlement, not ours, not yours. The process forced it on us. So now we, strongly the message is from Hine Manuhiri, and I guess from the models, we'll come to that in a minute. You know, we don't see ourselves fitting really well. So, a reminder, we can't see this working on our behalf. The settlement for us should be based on the claims of those clusters. Those clusters need to be clearly stating how their claim gives them the right to claim some of those assets and settlement monies. We know we can, but we want to see everyone else do that. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Doreen. And that leads into the next part, and that's to do with the representation. So the representation part of the presentation presented 7 rōpū-based representation arrangements. On page 16 you would see where our current structure is in terms of representation, in terms of what's contained in the deed, which is a reflection of what Tata Tata inherited from Te Tira Whakiimi. We are not by any way saying that is the right structure to have. We are saying whatever amount of rōpū there are, let those rōpū determine how they want to configure themselves up, how they want to comprise themselves. Is it hapu-based? Is it marae-based? You know, the Waiaro, the trustees looked at a marae-based representation model across all the district and came to the realisation that 40 odd marae, 200 odd hapu governance structure is not going to work. But at the same time, where does that mana motahake come into that? By having a process where individual rōpū get together and tell tātou who they are, puts that back on the individual rōpū to 2 first things, have that discussion amongst themselves to sort out who, where their tupuna rohe resides, and then have that conversation without tātou being a referee or being overarching in this process. And that was the Crown's process before. They would tell us how they would want it to look and shape. But this time round, without the Crown there, we're asking the members, asking the rōpū, asking the kahui, to have that discussion with themselves and then come back and say this is what we want, look for it. And then Doreen brought up the point about we came together in 2009 and the trustees have received that feedback regarding that and come up with an independence process to go through. It's that kind of outlined on page 17 in the booklets. Because there was one comprehensive settlement, we've kind of brought up a framework that we think will work in terms of putting it into the trustee where our rōpū can go through a process whereby it can take out assets. And also one of the other key questions, as Doreen's highlighted in the back of the booklet, is how do we determine our rōpū's interest? Whether it's share of the capital, share of the income distribution. We know that equal may not be fair. To have that discussion because if a particular rōpū has a larger population, a large area of interest, and a larger treaty breach, may require that they have a larger portion of the settlement. So it's a discussion. One of the other key points we will need to have a discussion about amongst ourselves is determining what does that look like. What is there a formula? Is there something we can use that we all can agree on to get through that process? At the moment, the assumption is it's equal, but equal may not be fair. Okay. So representation. We've seen we've kind of are familiar with the 7 rōpū or the 7 cluster kahui structure we have currently. It seems to work well for ourselves, whether it's something we should retain going forward is the question.
Kia ora, Taina Muta, Long Mai Wahine, Rākau, Pāka, Whakaki, you name it, we're there. So my question would be, if one of the groups decides to split and you whakapapa to that group, what happens to you? Do you, I mean, that's the dilemma for me. I'm a simple bloke. When I go home, I just want to make sure I can fish, set my eel nets, go diving. And for the good of my mokos and my kids, I suppose, you know, for them to be able to do the same, as well as economic, you know, initiatives here. But for me, that's my dilemma. If we split, what happens? So yeah, that's it.
So what happens is you get if you fuck up a particular rōpū that splits, you'll get a right to vote in making that decision to split off. So when you go back home to work out who do you talk to if there's a rōpū entity that's controlling a particular area, and there's tātou, that's where tātou and the rōpūs need to come together to have an understanding about where the interests of each of those lie. Because our members want a strong rōpū kahui-based structure, as well as we need to retain tātou, we're going to end up with having this two dual entities, basically. Yeah, because of that, having those rōpūs provides them through their mana motahake, whereas tātou has to maintain because of the Crown process. Tātou and basically structure is a Crown process entity that's split out of a Crown process.
Sorry to be a bit behind the eight ball. So what are the RFRs and what are their value? Well, hang on. It says RFR and then it says rights to purchase 24 properties. So do those properties have to be purchased from the pūtea they've given us?
So basically there's two sets of properties. The right of first refusal, when a particular Crown asset within our area of interest comes surplus, then the Crown will offer it back to us to whether we want to buy that. But the Crown only sees tātou, it'll offer it to tātou because in our legislation and during the settlement, they never allowed us to have recognise the structure of our kahuis that sit underneath. They only saw one entity and they're only dealing with one entity because of the one single comprehensive settlement.
But is there a list of properties then that we could purchase?
Yeah, the 24 deferred selection properties are listed in the deed and listed in the settlement.
I see. And what's the value of those that we would have to spend to buy them?
Yeah, we're doing some analysis on that. We've come up with some preliminary valuations on them, doing some work about how much exactly.
Is it like in the millions?
Yeah, we'll be in the millions because there's one particular forest.
Under $10 million, but
about five, I think.
About
it is.
5.
Yeah.
Okay, but under 10, but they would be wonderful things for us to plant lots of trees on.
Oh yeah, exchange for the money. Do you understand the independence process and its purpose of what it's trying to achieve?
Just a question, well, maybe observation. So in terms of the initial structure that was used, TTTW, so my understanding would be that the 7 rōpū that validated that entity would have to have been validating it, right? They wouldn't have been dragged in, so there would have been an initial consultation / approval, authorisation of TTTW in order to proceed through the Crown and through the treaty process. Is that right?
That was done through our members last November, last October, through a ratification process. We came out to ratify the deed and the tātou entities.
Hold it, so actually what you're saying is that probably some were dragged into the process from the beginning, and now that we've reached finalisation, there's obviously underlying simmers going around because now it's all gotten real because the treaty, the settlement has been signed and to me. So and just let me understand. So if you whakapapa back to 4 rōpū within the different rōpū, you can still obviously be part of those separate rōpū, but you have only one voting right within TTTW.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
So, and therefore it would be incumbent upon the individual if they wanted to be included in the processes that are going on in their own rōpū. If they're part of everybody, it would be incumbent on them to go back to that specific rōpū and then to make their voice heard perhaps, or give their opinions, you know, make their observations. What I
Yep. No, definitely. Your participation back at there's two participation levels here. One at the collective tātou, and there's one back at your cluster or kāori or rōpū level. Two different perspectives you want to provide. So, but tātou for its purposes maintains a database. Members have only been able to select one particular rōpū for voting purposes of a particular trustee, so that enables fair transparency for everyone electing members on. They haven't incorporated voting rights or privileges based on how many rōpū you whakapapa to. That's where you list all the other rōpū, so then you can participate in those processes as well, that those rōpū decide. Any questions regarding that independence process? There's something, it was clearly something with the feedback we've got we need to move forward with, and we've done, hopefully we've reflected in that.
Sorry, if our particular cluster has a priority, so like for me it might be Mauri or the rehabilitation of the river mouth and Nora, so how does that affect in terms of how businesses gone through?
Yes, so basically if a particular rōpū sets their list of priorities and objectives, instead of tātou having a blanket policy for we're going to do housing now, it may not fit with each of the rōpū. They may be at different stages and want to be doing different things, focusing on developing other things. So we want the rōpū to come up with what their priorities or aspirations are. And then tātou's job would be is to provide them the capital base to do that, in terms of receiving income distribution to support those initiatives. But it depends on which model you're looking at, if the consolidated one or the diversified one.
Which makes tātou irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you need to send the assets back out to the people where it belongs and let them control it and decide what they want to do. And I don't agree with those models that I have access to somebody else's asset. I don't belong over at Mahia, in Rungamai Wahine, or Whakaki, or Rakai Pāka. So I'm not coming after your assets. I don't want your assets, but we want our assets back. And we want to have autonomy to be our own people. And that is not reflected in any of those models. And all the feedback that we've had around our motu is we 100% want autonomy and don't agree with any of those models. So it is unanimous at Makoro, it's been unanimous up at Hinemanahiri and Tamatarangi. So we need to see ourselves reflected in there. And also the representation and the voting of who can go in or out of tātou. It shouldn't be everybody else voting whether you can be in or out. It's our decision whether we're in or out.
Yep, exactly.
Kia ora.
Yeah. So if a particular rōpū wanted to exit, it's just those members who whakapapa to that rōpū get the vote to exit. The complication is, what Doreen's talking about, is the assets they take with it. Because we set it with a single comprehensive settlement and all the assets landed within the one entity, is that the question you see in the booklet is kind of greyed out there, is that whether then all the members have to vote on the exit package. That's the complication we're running into, and we're just working through that with the legal experts.
Excuse me if I seem naive, but my understanding is tātou has got no teeth in this whole thing. So you're really there on behalf of the Crown.
Crown needs us to stay in existence because it only deals with cultural redress with tātou. It's got to receive the asset. The asset hasn't been received yet. It's got to go through that process to be received.
But what I'm saying is those assets belong to all the rōpū. And while you are necessary, tātou is necessary, it's an instrument only. It's an instrument with no teeth. Thank you.
It's a means to an end, basically. Got to get from point A to point B. And that's what we're doing, going through this work plan process, is to hopefully get to the point where the rōpū get their assets. But to do that, we all need to agree. Yeah. Does anyone got no further questions on to the independence process? We'll move on to the two particular models we put up.
So have any of the 7 Roku indicated their preference for one option over the other?
No.
That's good.
So this has just been released. We're going through this process of dialoguing with our members. The clusters will provide feedback.
And none of the 7 have indicated that they wish to withdraw?
Yes, they have.
Oh, could you like to tell us which ones or not?
Well, clearly, Hinu Marihiri and Rongomahi and Aitaraka Toa are looking at that particular provision.
So the 2?
2. 4.
4.
Can be, yeah, up and down.
Oh, so 4 then there really is no tātou here.
Well, you've got to be mindful that there are some obligations tātou need to hear in terms of relationship agreements and maintaining that. So if a whole lot of groups left, then tātou's burdened with a whole lot of responsibilities and no funds to resource those activities that it is required to do under the legislation. So yeah.
Could those objectives be met under option 2?
Yeah, because tātou is still in existence in both models.
Right, so under option 2, tātou would be a semi-autonomous model.
Yeah, semi-autonomous. Yeah.
So
it would be, I mean, like, I would argue, and for the whānau here, that the semi-autonomous model is the best model, and that if we are to manage a Crown relation, we need to have a strong voice united, but we also need to say, okay, we've all been fighting this fight for many, many decades. We all have whanaunga who have passed, who are now with our ancestors, who we remember fighting this fight in the start, and here we are, we finally reached this point. So we're not going to weaken our taiaha against the Crown. We need to have a tātou to say that we are united. But under the Model 2, you are having some of that redress that I think our ancestors would have wanted to, so those autonomous organisations can be set up. I guess the thing I see that's missing in tātou is the support that's required for those iwi and hapu and corporations, societies to actually exist and be resourced to, because I look at tātou and you look very resourced with live streaming and Crown observers, etc. But I was on Rakai Parka for many years, Johnina, and we struggled with not much pūtea, could barely pay the photocopying bill, etc. So I think I would support Model 2 on the basis that they've already indicated independence, but I would strongly advise that tātou should remain, and one of its objectives should be to support the independent operation of those 7 organisations.
Kapai. Cool.
Given that 4 of the 7, which is the 7 is debatable, want to go independent now, why aren't we seeing a model of that already? And also, I'd like to question the 7th, which is the Waikato Moana Trust Board, given that they do not are not a traditional entity, have no eponymous ancestor, and only based on land owners on that deed. But they are also represented amongst all the other hapu. So is the Waikato Moana Trust Board double dipping when the assets are already going up to the hapu?
So remember, this is a process whereby we haven't said that the existing 7 kahui are the ones who are going to be the ones to do this. We've said that there's a new approach here by looking at it based on rohe and tupuna. So you need to go back to those existing kahui and then have a discussion with your neighbours about coming together and agreeing what that structure looks like. So if you're looking at you telling us, not we telling you. Now in terms of other entities that are currently represented on tātou, that's a discussion for those hapu within that particular cluster, those marae within that particular cluster, to have that discussion with their particular neighbours to come to an agreement. So it's not about the existing structure and it's being the one that we're going to use going forward. All of our saying is that we need to put this question back to the members that make up those particular kahui or clusters currently to have that discussion and tell tātou what it wants to look like.
Kia ora, Leon. We've actually told you we want to go out on our own. 4 groups have told you we want to go out on our own, yet you haven't come up with a model to show us that.
Well, isn't that
in the discussions and in the actual table, 4 groups have been very clear they want to go out on their own. I'm also worried about your model, and even if we do go out later, which I hope that's not the case, the tax implications of moving money from one trust to another. There is. There'll be enormous tax losses.
Yes, will be. And it's using tax and using part of our treaty money to spend on tax is a wise thing to do. So having received this collectively, what is the best way then to work out whether those who want to go independently move forward? We need to have a process in place to make sure that those members who vote, who are whakapapa to that, have a fair say, because it says in the trust deed that we need to run a fair and transparent process. So to have a fair and transparent process, we've come up with a particular framework on page 17 that starts to have that process of fair and transparent. And we cannot do this by 14 trustees in a room saying we're going to divide this up. That is not fair and transparent. Fair and transparent is making sure our members are involved in this discussion. They have the right to have the final say on that framework. Because at the end of the day, we went and ratified this deed with all of the members. They all got to participate, whether they're ahika, non-ahika, where they're based. They got the right to register and vote. So it is naturally that they also get the right to vote again. It's been fair and transparent. You do see that the two different models, one, they're focusing on ownership of the assets. So that's where a lot of potential, rairu come up with. Yeah.
So with the right of first refusal with properties, would it make sense for tātou, as soon as the settlement is done, is to buy all of those properties that are listed, and then they would be distributed to all of the 7 ones when the breakup happens? That makes much more practical sense, because for starters, I don't think they would have the same tax implications, and those are assets that need to be acquired, otherwise they'll go to the private market.
So first of all, we got to get an indication from the particular rōpū who have interest in those properties to indicate whether they want to buy those properties or take those properties back. Not for tātou to say that it's going to buy them because it thinks they're a good asset. If a particular asset resides in a particular area, we're recognising that it's that particular rōpū's decision to determine whether they want to buy it back.
So Leon, they're already targeted. Yeah, so we've already put a mark on it, that they're ours. So when they become available for sale, then we would have hoped that the rōpū would have already indicated that's for sale.
Yeah, we already know what the 24. We already know what the 24 are, but it's the RFRs. We won't know until it goes through, they come surplus.
With the 24, you've already consulted with each of the 7 parties.
Well, that's what we're working through now.
They're indicating now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But we need to work out who the rōpū are first. That's the process we're trying to accomplish through this.
If tātou does exist at the end of this process, is there anything that you would create, and realise the opportunities in the new political environment for us to do our own thing, like having our own killing chain or our own forestry processing plants?
Yeah.
Or because each iwi with only a small puti at $12 million each wouldn't be able to do it, whereas a large tātou.
Well, that's the trade-off we're going to have. Mana motahaki versus the collective power of economics. That is, at the end of the day, the discussion.
And I would say that discussion actually leads to the failure of a tātou 1 model or even the second model, because what it's actually doing is, if you've got 7 people or 6 people voting at the table for an asset that's sitting down at Mahia, straight away you've missed out everybody else. So how do you split an asset or expenditure or priorities across different hapu?
I'm not saying, I'm saying if you've got 23 farm properties, and those farm properties have a deal whereby the honey, the manukau honey, and the stock and the trees, but all coming from it have a chain of economic benefit to jobs for our whānau in a mill in town, or a honey processing plant in town, or a meat chain out in town, then we're owning that line, and then we can start looking overseas to market those products as an indigenous brand.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but that is still an example of the failure of the model. It actually might be your priority, but it might not be everybody's priority. And if it's your priority, and 6 people vote against you, you haven't got it. And vice versa. If someone else's priority is another economic asset, then they're going to miss out. So that's why we actually go for the devolution model, which clearly tātou haven't listened to us because it's not represented up there.
So the devolution model is represented through the independence process. So those high-level models, concepts we come up with before, weren't models. They were concepts on an idea on a spectrum. Now, what does it look like underneath? The two models plus the independence process is a reflection of that. And that's what the trustees have come up with. So you understand with Model 1, particularly, individual rōpū don't own assets, but they can appoint representatives, either the directors, relationship managers, as kaitiakitanga over those particular assets. So we recognise that if a certain asset resides in a certain area, then that particular rōpū will have a lot more say over it than the wider tātou. Whereas on this other side, Model 2, that's through ownership. So that particular asset, if it resides in your area of interest, you would get it back and you would be able to run it how you benefit from. But at the same time, both these models require a distribution and an asset allocation policy. And that's going to be hard enough to work through on its own. Which particular rōpūs get what in terms of the share and percentage-wise?
What is everything going to get spent on?
What's that?
What is everything going to get spent on?
Well, in the singular consolidated model, the operational cost is all centralised. Where you have a diversified model, you've got 8 separate entities, so you've got a lot of duplication.
No, but I mean, has tātou written a plan that, you know, you've got a certain amount of pūtea will go into investments?
Not yet.
Like a saver,
no.
And then a percentage comes off every year, and then that will go into education and health and wellness.
Yeah.
So well, I mean, is that? I think that must be the. Oh, you still can't hear me. Oh, so that. Oh.
Yeah.
I just want people to hear me here. I don't care about so what I'm saying is, so tātou hasn't any input at all about you've got $88 million, you're going to spend it all on.
No.
Doing up the marae?
No. So we haven't had a discussion yet because we don't know who wants to stay in and what the arrangements are. Before you can have a discussion about what the priorities are for tātou, we need to run through this process to say, well, who wants to stay as part of a collective? What is the particular model? What's the particular asset arrangement? Because we don't know if it's 88 million, it's 20 million, 30 million, or what million until we go through this process.
So what about a model where you just split the difference, when you say, okay, here's this pūtea that didn't exist 5 minutes ago, now it exists. Half of it stays with tātou, but they're not going to spend any of it, they're only going to spend the interest, and then the rest of it goes to each iwi to do whatever they want. And then that interest is going to those 4 the
well-being. Yep.
The kaitiakitanga, the grants that people can apply for and do exciting things with, but that asset base, that $44.5 million is never depleted, and it's there for the next 1,000 years.
Yep.
And it's allowed to grow, maybe even only half the interest goes. The compound interest would stay there, and in 1,000 years, that $44 million in, you know, whatever terms would be worth $1 billion.
So that's a diversified model, where some of it stays in the middle.
Well, I support that.
Yeah.
But you need to state that the money's not you know, the tātou is not going to sit there and spend it all on lotto.
No, of course not, but it needs to grow.
Well, we can spend some of it on lotto.
And I want to bring in here because I have a background in investment management and corporate governance. My concern is that tātou with that collective and aggregated fund does have a lot of power, providing it filters down to the marae. My experience is that it doesn't. But I'm also concerned because I've seen where non-experienced groups have received their pūtea, 20 million in the middle of, and it's gone on faulty management. So they made investments that they had no understanding of. So I work in offshore investments. I work with large groups, and I know I can bring investment, and I can bring tourism, I can bring so on, interesting. But I'm from the basis of how do you, the devolution process is critical in that what I don't see with some of the big corporates is any filter down to hapu. I don't see anything. They might get a $12,000 grant to run the marae, but the money is spent, and I'm talking maybe Ngāti Wai, you've read a little but about Ngāti Wai recently. So, you know, my worry is that that has got representation from hapu, but they are they're just completely inexperienced in managing money. So my concern is a fund of 88 million can be pretty much lost in a matter of 10 years, and there has been no filter down. So I'm where Leo is that I would like to see some of that money go down to because my assumption is that hapu can manage it. However, the truth is, not all hapu know what they're doing. Now, the ASB Trust is something that I've worked with for a long time. They have managed to hold on to their original fund, and their funds are disseminated out into the community, and it has worked, and it continues to work. So there's an element in which some of that putia needs to, and the collective talking to government, although in my opinion you ignore government and you walk your own path now, because you can, and you don't have to talk or any government that's in at the moment. But there is that balance where Leo says about a consolidated fund and consolidated agreements. So, because Wairoa, from my growing up there, was based on seasonal work. And, you know, you lived and died on seasonal work. My father was the secretary for the Ngāti Porou Ngāti Kahanunu collective gardening. You know, there's some stories around there. There is some merit in that collective unification of aspiration, but I also believe that hapu needs to have enough putia to progress, because it's those kids who come to that marae who don't believe in the corporate entity. And I don't believe in the corporate entity. I have yet to see it filter down to anybody. So I'm prepared to come home and I want to do some mahi at home because my moko are growing up, they don't need me, but I don't believe in the corporate entity. And so you are right. I don't see that, I don't believe in total withdrawal, because there is a collective might in a negotiating sense. And, you know, if say you want to take Alliance on, or you want to take AFCO on, you need a collective fund to be able to take them on. You need to be able to set up Māori freezing works, and you need to be able to set up those farms. Now, it's a collective negotiating, but there also has to be that dissemination of funds down to hapu. Now, whether that's from a collective putia, similar to ASB, which puts out millions upon millions of dollars to each of the groups in Northern Region and in Auckland, millions of money, dollars, but they collectively manage that. So my problem is around some of the representation from hapu. Now I'll go with Ngāti Wai, because I'm currently working on a couple of things there, is they're not skilled enough
capacity, you know,
to do that. But on the hapu back in Catherine Bay, on Aotea,
they can do.
Certainly there are skills, and they should have had that autonomy, and it's been taken away by the collective.
Collective, big,
It's kia ora.
So a couple of key points you've raised there is that who are the beneficiaries of tātou tātou? Are they the rōpū or individual members? So if we answer that question, say, if the rōpū are the beneficiaries and receive the putia income, and then they get the funding to then decide on the priorities, set the money, what should be spent, provide the grants and that, then are we creating that connection at that ground level? There's a filtering down, or are we just adding another layer in between the members and the money and the members? You know, it's got to go through another entity to get down to a group, but at least at that stage you answered your question regarding providing those particular hapu on the ground control over what they want to do in terms of establishing their own economic base. So that's probably a question to ask ourselves. Do you see ourselves individually as beneficiaries of tātou tātou, or are the rōpū the beneficiaries?
What is the response from Pākehā been to all this going on in Wairoa? Because I mean, like, you know, it's a town in decline. But we've just had a council that's voted to have 50-50 councillors Māori Pākehā, so which is a big deal across the country. There's not many councils that have done that, and like, you know, a lot of Pākehā trying to do things to uplift the place. But if tātou existed, including the iwi distribution model, would we be working with them to uplift Wairoa?
Yep. we recognise that we need partnerships to get things done. And we all can't be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff and use the settlement money to do that. There are other money and pools of money out there to tap into. So that's the point about having that collective entity to do that. But at the same time, recognise that back at home, there's specific aspects of a policy like RMA policy that's the Ropu's area because they are on the ground, they know that. Yeah. But in terms of a collective economic policy that develops the whole community, tātou could be involved in that, leveraging what the relationships it has with the tripartite, with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, the World District Council, to making sure that we're part of those conversations. Because the other aspect too we've got to this is, where's the Niki structure fit in this? Because we could be played off between both. You've got Niki having its own presence with the Tai Whenua, us being there as well. It provides the opportunity for the Pākehā, for the councils to go to one to play the other off against. So we need to be mindful of how we want to be represented and seen within Wairoa. Because the Pākehā like to deal with just one entity. And a lot of the times they're not coming to us, they're going to the existing entity that's there. But they recognise we've got money coming and they've got good ideas about what they want to spend that money. Like everything else. But, we're keeping them at an arm's length until we go through this process with our members to find out what the final structure looks like.
But Niki's got their own money, which is actually our money.
Yes, well, that's it. That's another discussion that we don't want to get into that.
Sorry, just acting devil's advocate. So, and I just want to go back to the whole point of TTTW. So my understanding from what you've said today is basically the 7 Ropu got behind the entity, they ratified the trust deed. In other words, they've ratified the whole process. Despite, is that correct?
No, the 7 individual members, not the Ropu. It's the members of...
The clusters of TTT?
No, not the clusters.
Okay.
Individual people in the room ratified that. Not
by each membership.
Yeah.
We go back to this issue though. There's 7 that make up the TTTW.
Yeah, those are the
7. Those 7 have 2 representatives from each group area.
Yeah.
And those representatives are put there by those Ropu, those clusters.
Yeah.
Clusters.
No, by the members that contained in that cluster, not the cluster
the members
itself.
of the cluster make up the cluster, correct?
Yeah. There is no cluster entities that appoint currently. You understand that? There's a difference
then
here.
Where did the 2 representatives that agreed to ratify the trust deed, how did they get their authority to do that?
Because the members,
if it's not from the members.
The members ratified the trust deed when they ratified the deed of settlement at the same time.
So we get back to the same point, which is the deed of settlement has been ratified. If anyone wanted to not go with the settlement at the time, that was their time.
That was their time.
There's no longer an opportunity to do that in terms of the settlement.
Yes.
You had an opportunity before the settlement was signed. You could have said, you know what, we don't want to go with that settlement. We're going to go our own way. We're going to go through our own legal process. That's what we're going to do. But my understanding from what's been said here today and what I thought had been previously is that that wasn't done at the time. Therefore, the time has passed. We need to move on. We need to look now that there are 7 clusters. They do make up TTTW. Now we need to determine, everyone's got their own opinion, how those assets are going forward. I don't want to suck eggs, but we just seem to be coming back to this point where people want to go out of the group, where clusters want to remove themselves from the group, but with respect, the group has already been ratified. It's too, my belief is that it's too late for that. So moving forward, though, I tautoko the concept. I don't want someone else's assets. If their maunga is earning is in their area, I don't think I have any right to what that means. Okay, but in terms of the putia, if the putia was, how do I say this, it wasn't earned, but if the putia came back to TTTW on behalf of the 7 clusters, then I believe the putia should remain in the clusters. In terms of what people do in their individual clusters, that's mana motuhake. That is if they lose their whatever, that's their prerogative. We don't ever, as the rest, have any, in my opinion, have any right to say to them, you're not authorized, you're not experienced enough, da-da-da-da-da. We have no right because that's not our cluster. They want to take it, that, in my opinion, that's their prerogative.
Yep.
They lose it, that's their prerogative.
Yep.
If they want to still be part of TTTW,
Yep.
in terms of TTTW on scales, you know, what's that? Economies of
These are
scale
scales. Yep.
can help them, can
Yep.
help the whole group.
Yep.
But there needs to be, again, there needs to be an undertaking, there needs to be an understanding in terms of how it will help them. I kind of looking at those two new models that you've got, perhaps it doesn't go deep enough
Yes.
to you know, help facilitate what each individual cluster
group.
wants.
Yep.
But in terms of an overall holistic view, we're one little area of Aotearoa. If we don't stick up and keep ourselves together, then who's going to keep us together? You know. The other thing I just want to make. Remember, you know, most of us actually are outside our ropu.
Yep.
We don't live in our tūranga waiwai anymore.
Yep.
There's all that experience out there that can come back
Come
into
back.
our tūranga waiwai.
Exactly.
You know, just throwing that out there. Kia ora.
Yeah. So just the background, how do we got to this point of a singular TTOW structure is because the Crown never allowed us to come up with a structure before the ratification of the settlement. They only saw one comprehensive settlement, they only saw one entity. So, but that's what we're dealing with. Yeah. But we played the game. Yeah. So we played the game, and in the trustee, we made sure there was a process which we called the work plan, which is what we're going through now. That we could go through a review process with the existing members of the trust to work out what the final arrangements are. So, irrespective of what the Crown wanted, we made sure that, or the Tira Whakiimi at the time made sure that there was a process to walk through that got to the final, because the Tira Whakiimi couldn't agree on it either. So we're going through this process now. This is about what we're doing currently, coming up with who's in, who's out, what the structure should look like, who are the lōpū, what are the representation arrangements now. All right? Doi.
Kia ora anō. Yes, just to clarify and support what Leon's saying, we're in the interim phase of tātou o te Wairoa, and that is for the reason that Leon said, Te Tira Whakiimi could not agree on a final definitive structure for the new trust, the settlement trust, which exists now. So a 2-year period was set, of which these members currently are members of that trust, the interim trust. At the end of that period, the new tātou o te Wairoa Trust will be formed based on all of this input and all of the feedback from the whānau. So we're not finished, and this is the interim 2 years at the moment, and there'll be further elections next year.
Yep. Papai. Thanks.
Yeah. So collective power for negotiation, representation, doesn't come from an entity, it comes from whanaungatanga relationships. We all have the ability to form those relationships and that strength of collective power at the time it's needed. We had it before this process and we'll have it after this process. That's not a reason to create an entity or have an entity for us. We've all done this. Our tupuna have all done this before. So that's not new and it's not different. And I agree with you about each cluster or hapu entity, whatever that is, they take on their own risk when they receive their settlement. They agree that they're the ones making the call. If they waste their money, they waste their money. If they invest wisely, they invest wisely. But they don't need to be told by other people how they should be doing that. That's the whole point of mana motuhake. I agree with that. Also, Leon, you said that the individual rōpū decide whether they should be part of it or not, or have that individual exiting strategy. It says here that everyone's deciding whether there will be an option for rōpū to leave tātou. So that's everyone deciding, not individuals deciding.
Just clarify that. It's just the framework for the exit. We all need to agree on that because we need to agree to change the trustee to include the framework. There is no framework for an individual rōpū to currently exit. There is no provisions in the trust deed for that to happen. So we need to agree on that framework, and then the individual rōpūs make that decision themselves.
Just for clarity, Leon, so the two representatives are not appointed, I mean like...
They're not appointed.
Rākau Pāka has Te Iwi o Rākau Pāka Inc. that exists.
Yep.
And it's not two people appointed by
them.
that.
No.
It's two people who put their hand up and say, that is my ascendancy, and I'm standing here to represent my people.
Yep.
I am accountable to my people, but I'm not accountable to any representative body of that group.
No.
So, you know, if a coalition of people got together and said, no, we want tātou to stand strong, we want to be as one, we agree that some whitia should go out to those, but we want, because I totally disagree with what you said, that people should independently be allowed to just fritter it away. Because that's like saying, well, tātou, if it wanted to, should be able to fritter it away. No way. Like, you know, people have fought for this for 30 years, 150 years, and we might have reached that point. And that's a Pākehā model to fritter it away. Let's go spend it on lotto, let's go on nice holiday overseas. And so tātou should be as accountable as each one of those 7 member bodies, and that whitia should be managed responsibly and should be an asset that's there for the next 7 generations. Yep. And that's our wero to ourselves, and to come together in that regard. And each constituent organisation should manage those assets responsibly for their next 7 generations too. So that's just that bit there. But the main point is that we don't know the outcome of the election in 12 months' time, and we don't know whether we're just going to vote on a whole lot of people who want to dismantle tātou and make bad of all this hard work that's gone on. And I guess kind of the only one that hasn't been talked in this korero is the issue of cultural redress, and tātou being the body for that. So there are outstanding methods of cultural redress that I think tātou must exist as to embody those issues.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of points in there. Currently, yes, members that whakapapa to a particular rōpū get to vote and elect those members to tātou. It's not another entity that appoint, but what we're proposing in the models is that those entities appoint, which is, so that's the models presenting about. But what currently happens is, it's a bit different. You'll get to nominate someone onto a trust, and everyone who whakapapas to that particular rōpū get to vote for those members. But this situation, there's some structure with capability and capacity with those individual rōpūs to come together, hold their own elections, and then appoint to tātou. So we're putting that decision back onto the rōpūs again to come up with who's their best candidate, who can they could attract to represent them the best on tātou, what kind of resources they have currently, where they need to be supported to make sure that they can run a fair and transparent process. In terms of the points regarding the properties, yes, we understand that the particular rōpū, if they have an interest in a property, may have rights to that and may do what they want to do with it. But at the same time, we can build some stop-back measures in there. So tātou could have the first right of refusal if it ever don't go belly up to offer it back to tātou. Yeah, but in terms of the cash asset, that's the risk you run. It comes down to those individual rōpū saying, these are the people we're going to put ahead, and that's their decision, and we respect that for them to do that.
But no one said, because $88 million distributed between 10,000 members on your list, you just write a check for $8,000 each and be done with it.
Yeah, well, that was one of the high-level concepts that we ruled out to begin with, full devolution to individual members. We never went down that path because
but that's kind of,
that wasn't on the spectrum.
I disagree with that. We have to collectively manage this for the future. But so the other one was about cultural.
Yeah, cultural redress. Yeah.
And I mean, those are what's the clock on that in terms of our relationship with the Crown, in terms of matters of cultural redress that are still being explored and researched?
So basically, cultural redress is we, as part of the settlement, never got any properties back as cultural redress properties. They were all focused on relationships. So it's a relationship-based approach. So our tātou is the point of contact initially. It can be their point of contact initially. We've already signed a relationship agreement with the Ministry for Environment we're looking at doing the dock one, and then also needs to come up with the Te Rewera one. But that doesn't mean that once we've got those relationships in place, that those particular rōpū that have interest in those areas take over those relationships. It's just the single point of contact, because that's what the legislation says, that's what the deed of settlement says, got to go to tātou tātou to begin with. And that's why the point is. Where's Gina? Where's Gina? Go on. You talk to her. Yeah.
Is it on the list of RFR?
Yeah, RFR. It's an RFR property. What it is? Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. It's an RFR. No, it's right, owned by DOC. Yeah. Yeah. There's two parts. There's the commercial side with the pools there, and there's the actual reserve itself. So there's two separate parts. Yeah. Anyone heard that? Oh, sorry.
I just want to have a final say on behalf of Hinamana Hiri. Hinamana Hiri are independent hapu. We manage assets. Our people have been managing assets for longer than I've been alive. We have got very experienced people in business investment, and we have got a whole bunch of young rangatahi coming up in many fields. We actually do not need the support of tātou to get us through to the next stage. So we would actually like written in there an opportunity to withdraw at the first opportunity, so we can move along and do our own thing. So we need to clearly see that written up there somewhere. And I can assure you we have got the people and the experience, young and old, coming up through our ranks who can manage our assets well and into the future. And that also means if we want to do a JV with anybody sitting around this room now, we will enter into a JV. So we do not need to be one entity to work together for investment opportunities. We would look at joint ventures because it benefits all of us. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Lane. Is there any other questions, particularly around the two models and their aspects? Well, no further questions. I think it's a good opportunity now just to break and have a cup of tea, and then you can individually discuss some of the points that we've talked about today. But also it's an opportunity to get hold of your whānau that haven't registered. You see we're trying to push registrations. It's always going to be one of the key priorities for us, is to push the registration. We're up around 7,000. You know, we potentially see 38,000 there as the pool that we should be aiming for. But we want to make sure that you go away, you take the information back to your whānau members, and you discuss them and get them involved in this process of registration. So looking forward, this is the second weekend of roadshows we've undertaken. We've got one more weekend to go with Palmerston North, Invercargill and Christchurch. There was a point about whangarei. We did do analysis of whangarei and didn't find a high population of members up there in terms of the other areas. So that's why we focused on the 9 areas, because we looked at the numbers and stats and said that's where they live, so we've got to go where they live. So that's where we ended up. So if you've got whānau members that live in those 3 remaining areas, Palmerston North, Invercargill and Christchurch, please get hold of them on Facebook, ring them, tell them to turn up to the hui next weekend to make sure that they are informed as well and part of this process. That's a key aspect, that we get as many people along to these and get those opinions, because those opinions you've given us today are quite good. Remember the feedback form in the back of the booklet's out. If you've got feedback, or else online through the website, Facebook page, etc., to provide your feedback. Registrations? Yeah, so register, please whānau. Oh, feedback, we're going to keep it open as long as possible, so that'll be 2-3 months potentially. Yeah, because we haven't set a timeline when we're going exactly when we're going to come back with the recommendation, because it's going to be quite to get there. So. Yeah, so please, especially the whānau coming back from Aussie, get them involved too. You know, use the Christmas period time to G them up. Cool. No further questions. I'll hand it back to Richard to close us in. Kia
ora tātou. As we said at the beginning of the meeting, we came here to listen and to get a clear idea of what the feedback might be from our whanaunga up here in Tamaki Makau Road. That feedback has been loud, clear and concise. Just to remind us, there is still one more weekend to go, and we will listen as intently as we have listened today to be able to bring all the information that's being provided right around the motu to one point. Tā reira, I runga i era mihi poto noa nei, mau tō tātou hui e whakakupi I runga I te karakia e every day. I hono rehe kloria ki te atua matanga mau ngā rongo I runga ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa anō hoki. Nā reira I hua koe ni tumu atau reo karakia e tangi atu nei kia koe. I roto I te pōkai kahatanga e kimi ana e rapu ana I te māramatanga I te oranga tunitanga anō hoki. Koe nei āhuatanga e hua e mea tuku ki tau warawaro. I runga I te mōhio ki tā horomona I whakatau ki te ao. Ara me whakapau atu o mātau ngā kau ki te whakawirina ki atu kia koe. A me kau o mātau e oki rungi o mātau ake mātau rau. He mea tuku anō e I hua I runga I te whakaro. Ko koe a I hua, ko koe tō mātau kaihanga, tō mātau kai poke poke. A ko mātau āu tamariki. Hoi anō he tangina ngā tamariki ki te matua kia arohaina mai, kia manaaki hea mai, kia tukuna iho ko te wairua tapu hai I whakatūperatia mai kia mātau, ngā kūwaha o te tika, o te pono, o te māramatanga, o te oranga tonutanga, a me te mātauranga. A ma mātau uki e whakakuroria ki tuai ngā tapu, kia tamu hiwai mātau ko koe a I hua, kuroria ki tuai ngā tapu, amu. Kia ora tātai.